August 21st, 1980. A global giant is on a crusade. 1 month after paying his first visit to a fledgling computer company, Jack Sams flies back to Bellevue, Washington. Shortly after 9 a.m. on August 21st, 1980, Sams arrives to meet 24-year-old Bill Gates and his management team.
We laid out in detail what we were trying to do, what the hardware was going to look like.
We couldn't contain the energy.
But the energy is quickly curbed by a major problem. Jack Sams wants to buy 2 computer components from Microsoft. Gates says Sams can have Microsoft's language software with no problem. But the second piece, the brain of the computer called the operating system, is much trickier. There's only one company, Gates suggests, that can provide it. Gates says his friend's company, Digital Research, near Monterey, California, is the only place that can produce IBM's upgraded operating system. Together, Gates and Digital Research's owner, Gary Kildall, can supply the parts IBM needs. Gates calls Kildall on the spot and arranges a meeting with IBM for the next day.
As soon as the IBM folks left, Bill went absolutely nuts. We knew that a deal like that with IBM, if they got really serious about pushing their PC, would totally revolutionize what the company looked like.
August 22nd, Jack Sams drives south along California's Highway 1 to Pacific Grove to meet with the owners of Digital Research. In this quaint Victorian home, the IBM project hits a huge hurdle. Digital Research won't sign IBM's one-sided non-disclosure agreement without knowing what IBM wants.
IBM basically said, I can use anything you can tell me. You can't use anything I tell you. By the way, this meeting never happened.
Digital Research refuses to cooperate, forcing the IBM team to leave empty-handed. A desperate Sams calls Bill Gates.
We'd assumed we could get this, and our assumption was wrong.
If you don't have an operating system for this computer, it's pretty much dead.
Without an operating system, Sams tells Gates that Microsoft's deal with IBM is off. Two weeks later, Microsoft co-founder Paul Allen digs up a lead. Just a 30-minute drive from Microsoft in a suburb called Tukwila, a small computer retailer called Seattle Computer may have a crude homemade operating system. The manager of the shop is an amateur computer programmer named Rod Brock.
The company was really run by 2 technical people, myself and Tim Patterson. Both Tim and I were trying to act as business people, but really we're both technical people.
Brock's head programmer, 25-year-old Tim Patterson, built the system in just 4 months. They called it the Quick and Dirty Operating System, or QDOS for short. QDOS runs like a scaled-back version of the operating system IBM needs. It would have to be significantly adapted, but using the framework could save months of labor. September 22nd, 1980. With a mandate for secrecy from IBM, Paul Allen calls Rod Brock and asks if he would ever consider licensing QDOS. Brock says he might let someone use it for about $10,000.
Gates then went to the IBM folks and said, I can buy it, you can buy it. How do you want to handle this?
We wanted third-party participation. We wanted third-party hardware people. We wanted third-party software people. We wanted the world to jump on our bandwagon.
Gates says he'll try to get QDOS from Seattle Computer. A deal with IBM is once again within reach. The next step is to complete a large proposal for IBM with an official price bid, a schedule, and specifications for QDOS and the language software. It's the biggest proposal Microsoft has ever done, and it's due at a meeting in Boca Raton, Florida in just 1 week. The evening before the proposal is due, Bill Gates, office manager Steve Ballmer, and head programmer Bob O'Rear rush to finish the details of their IBM proposal.
We finished that proposal and we just ripped it out of the word processor, threw it in our briefcase and headed for the airport.
At Microsoft, it was kind of a game to see who could get to the airport just in time. The winner was the guy who stepped on the airplane just as the door was closing.
True to form, Gates, Ballmer, and Bob O'Rear are the last ones to board Delta's non-stop overnight flight to Miami. September 30th, Gates, Steve Ballmer, and Bob O'Rear touch down in Miami about 7 a.m. Their meeting starts at 10 o'clock, but they have a 2-hour drive ahead of them. Baggage claim, changing into rarely worn suits, and picking up the rental car mean every minute is critical in order to be on time at IBM.
I changed into a suit, put on my tie, as did Steve.
I can't even imagine what the reaction would be if somebody showed up without a necktie.
Bill changed into the suit and discovered he didn't have a tie.
These guys barely knew how to wear neckties.
Decided it was important enough that Bill should have a tie. And so we drove over to the shopping center and went to the door, and it wasn't quite 10 o'clock, so they weren't open.
They were petrified because they had to have neckties.
So we waited for them to open, dashed into this clothing store and bought Bill a tie, and then quickly drove over to IBM offices in Boca.
The Microsoft crew arrives at the IBM offices about 10:20 a.m., 20 minutes late.
We're sitting around waiting for them. They showed up breathless and in full business attire.
The IBM team lays out more research and their project deadlines. Gates soon realizes that he will have to wait until the next day to make a formal price bid on his work. And when he does, it won't be the plan that IBM expects. The next day, Bill Gates is prepared to make the pitch of a lifetime.
Jack Sams, trying to be nice to Gates, pulled him aside and said, "Don't be afraid to ask for a lot of money. We know this is going to be more expensive than it probably should be. So if you want us to give $1 million for this, we'll give you $1 million for this."
When Gates takes center stage to make his pitch, he surprises the IBM team. Gates doesn't want $1 million. What he wants is simple, just $400,000 to license his electronic language software called BASIC. He'll even throw in the operating system QDOS at no extra charge. But he has one hook.
Gates had, the hard way, learned a couple of lessons that turned out to be very important. One is that you never take a lump sum payment for something.
Gates insists that he be able to sell his language software and Seattle Computer's operating software to other computer manufacturers. And he'll take a royalty, $1 for every computer IBM sells. If it wants to do business with Gates, IBM has little choice but to accept his terms. After 2 days of meetings, Bill Gates emerges from Boca Raton with a verbal deal with the king of all computer companies.
IBM paid little or nothing, but they had basically given Gates the right to print money by selling to lots of other companies.
We were very jubilant over that and felt we had a grand opportunity.
There's just one little detail Bill Gates has not addressed. Bill Gates, enterprising genius and programmer extraordinaire, has not actually signed a contract with Seattle Computer to use its operating system called QDOS.
Bill Gates actually sold IBM a product that he didn't own yet.
And Rod Brock at Seattle Computer may not agree to the terms Microsoft wants.
And I said, wait a minute, you changed it. You changed the deal we talked about.